The corridors of Galactic Academy Station buzz with the chatter of a dozen different species, their translator devices creating a symphony of voices that echoed through the pristine halls. Among the towering Velcari and the crystalline Nexians walked one figure who stood out not for his height or exotic features, but for his complete ordinariness. Kim Tae sat alone in the back corner of advanced xenobiology, his human features drawing the usual stares and whispers. At 19, he was average height for his species, with dark hair and eyes that seemed unremarkable compared to his classmates' bioluminescent patches or compound visual organs. "Look, the Death Worlder brought lunch again," sneered Vortex, a sleek purple-skinned Catherian whose people had mastered faster-than-light travel, while humans were still discovering fire. "I wonder if it's more of that disgusting processed matter they call food." The Kytherian's companion, a mechanical-looking Synthian designated as Bot 23, added in his emotionless voice, "My data shows humans eat organic matter in its most basic form. Very inefficient." Kim continued eating his sandwich, pretending not to hear the comments that had become as routine as the daily lectures. Other students turned to watch, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed disgust. "My father says humans only reach space because they found crashed ships," Vortex continued, his voice carrying across the classroom. "Primitive scavengers pretending to be civilized." Professor Nellera, a wise eight-armed Octoran, tapped her teaching pod with one tentacle. "Perhaps we should focus on today's lesson about evolutionary adaptation rather than—" "But Professor," Vortex interrupted, standing with the fluid grace of his species, "isn't this relevant? We're studying how species adapt to their environments. Humans come from a class, 12 Death World, yet they seem so fragile. How did they even survive to develop technology?" The classroom fell silent. Kim felt every eye upon him, waiting for his reaction. He had endured months of this treatment, the constant reminders that he was different, that his species would consider the galactic equivalent of lucky barbarians. Kim slowly put down his sandwich and looked up at Vortex. The Kytherian's purple skin gleamed under classroom lights, his three eyes fixed on Kim with what looked like amusement. Around them, other students leaned forward, sensing drama. "You really want to know?" Kim asked quietly. Vortex laughed, a sound like crystal bells. "Oh, please enlighten us, Death Worlder. Tell us how your primitive species managed to stumble into space travel." Kim stood up slowly. He was shorter than most of his classmates, but something in his posture made the room feel different. Smaller, somehow. "You think we're fragile because we don't have armor like the Nexians," Kim said, his voice calm but carrying to every corner of the room. "You think we're stupid because we don't have computer brains like the Synthians. You think we're weak because we don't have the natural weapons of the Velcari." But 23's mechanical head tilted. "Correct assessment. Humans lack significant evolutionary advantages." Kim smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. "Do you know what a human child learns to do before they can walk properly?" The question caught everyone off guard. Professor Nellera's tentacles stopped moving, her large eyes focused intently on Kim. "They learn to fall," Kim continued. "A human baby falls hundreds of times learning to walk. Each fall hurts. Each fall could injure them, but they get up every single time. Do you know why?" Vortex's amusement was fading. "Because they're too stupid to quit? Because on Earth, if you stayed down, you die." Kim's voice was matter-of-fact, as if he was discussing the weather. "Every human alive today is descended from survivors. Not the strongest, not the smartest, not the fastest. The ones who refuse to quit." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of species that had never known real hardship. "You want to know how we survived to develop technology? We didn't just survive our world. We conquered it. Every predator that hunted us, we hunted back. Every disease that tried to kill us, we found a cure. Every natural disaster that tried to wipe us out, we rebuilt stronger." The classroom was completely silent now. Even the usual background hum of the station systems seemed muted. "Your people developed faster than light travel, while mine were discovering fire," Kim said to Vortex. "But your people never had to fight for every single day of their existence. Mine did, for millions of years." He sat back down and picked up his sandwich. So yes, we eat primitive food. We come from a primitive world. But we're here, aren't we? In your advanced academy, learning alongside species that had a million-year head start. Kim took a bite of a sandwich and chewed thoughtfully. Makes you wonder what we'll accomplish when we really get going. Professor Nellera cleared her throat with sound like rushing water. Well, she said, her tentacles moving in what Kim had learned was the octane equivalent of a smile. That was quite educational. Perhaps we should indeed focus on adaptation strategies. Student Kim, would you care to share more about human adaptive responses? For the first time in months, Kim felt something other than isolation in that classroom. He felt the weight of curiosity instead of contempt, interest instead of dismissal. I'd be happy to, Professor, he said, but I think a practical demonstration might be more effective than just talking. Vorkex's 3 eyes narrowed. What kind of demonstration? Kim's smile was genuine this time. How about a field trip? The Academy's Central Assembly buzzed with excitement as students gathered to hear about the semester's major field study. Professor Nellera's tentacles moved gracefully as she manipulated the holographic displays, showing various worlds across the galaxy. This term's expedition will focus on evolutionary development in challenging environments, she announced. Each group will propose a world for study, and the most scientifically valuable proposals will be selected. Kim Tae raised his hand before he could second-guess himself. Around him, his classmates shifted with surprise. The human rarely spoke unless directly questioned. Yes, Student Kim Tae? I propose we study Sol 3, Earth. The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the laughter. Vorkex's crystalline voice cut through the noise. The Death Worlder wants us to visit his primitive homeworld? What could we possibly learn there that we haven't already documented? But 23's mechanical head tilted. Database indicates Sol. 3 is classified as hostile to most known species. Educational value minimal. But Professor Nellera's large eyes showed interest. Explain your reasoning, Student Kim Tae. Kim stood, feeling his heart race. A uniquely human response that would have fascinated his xenobiology classmates if they knew about it. Earth represents the ultimate test case for adaptation under extreme conditions. You want to study evolutionary development? My world as creatures and environments that would challenge everything you think you know about survival, such as... The professor's voice carried genuine curiosity. Kim looked around the room at faces that ranged from amused to skeptical. Gravity that's 3 times stronger than most inhabited worlds. Weather systems that can change from freezing cold to burning hot in a single day. Predators that hunt in coordinated groups with intelligence levels that rival most sentient species. A blue-skinned Aquarian student named Fluxera raised a web hand. Surely you exaggerate. No world could be that hostile and still support complex life. Water that falls from the sky in frozen chunks the size of your fist, Kim continued, ignoring the interruption. Electrical storms that generate more power than most starships. Plants that can kill you just by touching them. And that's just on a normal day. The laughter had stopped. Several students were now leaning forward, their expressions shifting from amusement to concern. Vorkex stood up, his purple skin darkening with what Kim had learned was anger. Even if what you say is true, what could we possibly learn from such a barbaric place? We're advanced civilizations studying evolution, not survival horror. Kim smiled, and for the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt completely confident. That's exactly my point. Every species in this room evolved on worlds that were, by galactic standards, easy, stable climates, predictable seasons, abundant resources. You've never had to adapt to true hardship. And humans have? Asked a crystalline Nexian whose body sparkled with skepticism. Every single day for millions of years, Kim replied. Do you want to know why humans can eat almost anything organic? Because our ancestors had to. Do you want to know why we heal so fast? Because slow healing meant death. Do you want to know why we can function with minimal sleep, extreme temperatures, and constant stress? He paused, looking directly at Vorkex. Because everything on Earth was trying to kill us, and we had to become tougher than all of it just to survive. Professor Nellera's tentacles moved in what Kim recognized as deep thought. Interesting hypothesis, Student Kim Tae. But surely our databases contain sufficient information about Earth's conditions. Data isn't experience, Kim said. You can read about Earth's gravity, but you can't understand what it means until you try to walk in it. You can study our weather patterns, but you can't comprehend their impact until you're caught in a thunderstorm. You can analyze our ecosystem, but you can't grasp the constant pressure of survival until you're actually there. But 23's optical sensors focused on Kim. Hypothesis: direct observation would provide more complete data than remote analysis. Exactly, Kim nodded. And there's something else. Every species here developed technology and reached space because they were smart enough to overcome their world's challenges. But what happens when you face challenges your intelligence can't solve? When your technology fails? When your careful plans fall apart? The assembly had grown very quiet. Kim could see that his words were hitting home. Humans didn't reach space because we're the smartest or the strongest, he continued. We reach space because we never learn how to quit. When logic says something is impossible, humans try anyway. When the odds are against us, we find a different way. When everything goes wrong, we adapt. He looked around the room one more time. You want to study evolution under extreme conditions? Come to Earth. See what it takes to not just survive, but thrive when your entire world is actively hostile to your existence. Vorkex's 3 eyes narrowed. And if we can't handle your precious death world, Kim's smile was genuine and slightly dangerous. Then you'll learn something very important about the difference between intelligence and wisdom, between technology and survival, between knowing about adaptation and actually being adapted. Professor Nellera's tentacles stopped moving entirely. The silence stretched for what felt like minutes. Finally, she spoke. Proposal accepted. We'll organize an expedition to Seoul, 3 within 2 standard weeks. Student Vorkex, Student Bot 23, I believe you've just volunteered to join this research mission. The Kytherian skin went from purple to nearly white. That is to say... Excellent. Student Kim Tae, you'll serve as our cultural and environmental guide. This should prove most educational indeed. As the assembly dispersed, Kim caught fragments of worried conversations. Words like death world and primitive conditions floated through the halls. But for the first time since arriving at the academy, Kim was smiling. Soon, they would all understand what it really meant to be human. The research vessel Stellar Dawn dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, and immediately every alarm on the ship began screaming. What is that radiation signature? Gastiel Nova, a crystalline Nexian whose body flickered with alarm colors. Captain Tordan, a seasoned Regelian explorer, checked his instruments twice. It's their star. By the void, how do they live so close to that fusion furnace? Kim Tae, standing calmly at the observation deck, watched his classmates scramble into their environmental suits. Sol is actually a very stable star. Yellow dwarf, middle-aged, quite predictable. Predictable? Vorkex's voice cracked through his suit's comm system. The radiation levels would sterilize most worlds. That's just the beginning, Kim said, noting how they all instinctively move away from the viewports. Wait until we enter the atmosphere. The descent to Earth's surface was a nightmare for everyone except Kim. The ship bucked and rolled through atmospheric layers that seemed designed to destroy anything trying to pass through them. Lightning storms lit up the sky like artillery fire, and massive cloud formations swirled with barely contained violence. The atmospheric pressure is increasing beyond safe parameters, Bot 23 announced, its mechanical voice somehow conveying anxiety. We're at 1 standard atmosphere, Kim replied. This is normal for Earth. They landed at a research station in what had once been called Colorado, surrounded by towering mountains that scraped the sky. As the airlock opened, Kim stepped out wearing only a light jacket, breathing deeply the thin mountain air. His classmates remained in their environmental suits, scanners beeping frantically. The gravity... Vorkex struggled to take a step, his elegant movements reduced to awkward stumbling. 1G, Kim confirmed, then demonstrated by effortlessly jumping onto a boulder twice his height. This is actually considered a light gravity area for Earth. Sea level is more intense. Professor Nellera, supported by a gravity compensator, extended a tentacle toward a nearby stream. The water readings. It's full of minerals and organic compounds. Surely this isn't potable. Without hesitation, Kim knelt by the stream, cupped the water in his hands, and drank deeply. Mountain spring water, some of the purest on Earth. The collective gasp from his classmates was audible even through their suit filters. "He's going to die," whispered Zarlin, a delicate Etherian whose species survived on filtered light and processed gases. But Kim just wiped his mouth and smiled. "I'm just getting started. Wait until you meet the local wildlife." As if summoned by his words, a shadow passed overhead. The students looked up to see a golden eagle circling, its wingspan impressive even by galactic standards. "Apex predator," Kim explained casually. "They hunt from 3 miles up and can spot prey the size of your finger from that distance. Perfect vision, incredible speed, built for killing." The eagle landed on a nearby branch, fixed him with one piercing eye, then launched itself back into sky with casual power. "And that's considered one of the gentle ones," Kim added. Fluxera's blue skin had turned pale white. "That creature, it looked at us like we were food. Probably deciding if you were worth the effort." Kim said matter-of-factly, "Eagles are smart. They don't waste energy on prey that might fight back." But 23's sensors were spinning wildly. Analysis indicates multiple life forms approaching. Threat assessment, unknown. Kim listened for a moment to sounds his classmates couldn't identify. Just a family of deer. Herbivores. Completely harmless unless you corner them. A few minutes later, 3 graceful animals emerged from the trees. To Kim's classmates, they looked like elegant, peaceful creatures, until they noticed the sharp hooves and the way the largest one lowered its head when it saw the strangers. "Herbivores, you said?" Vorkex's voice was very small. "Those hooves can crack a human skull," Kim said conversationally. "The males fight each other during mating season. Sometimes they fight to the death. And if you threaten their young..." He shrugged. "Well, let's just say herbivore doesn't mean harmless on Earth." As if to prove his point, the largest deer snorted, stamped its feet, and stared directly at the group of aliens for several long seconds before deciding they weren't a threat and moving on. "Even your peaceful animals are weapons," whispered Yelnova. Kim nodded. "Everything on Earth had to evolve to survive or fight. There's no such thing as a completely defenseless creature here. Even rabbits can bite hard enough to need medical attention." Professor Nellera's tentacles were moving in what Kim recognized as deep concern. "Student Kim Tae, perhaps we should return to the ship and observe from a safer distance." "Professor," Kim said gently, "we haven't even left the research station grounds yet. This is considered one of the safest, most controlled environments on Earth. The real wilderness is different." Vorkex tried to take another step and nearly fell over. "How? How do humans function in this gravity?" Kim walked over and, with one hand, helped the Kytherian stand upright. To Vorkex, it felt like being lifted by a mechanical crane. "We don't function in it," Kim said. "We were shaped by it. Every human muscle, every human bone, every human reflex was built by millions of years of this gravity. It's not something we overcome. It's part of what we are." He looked around at his struggling classmates, all brilliant students from advanced civilizations, reduced to barely mobile visitors on his home world. "You wanted to study evolution under extreme conditions," Kim said. "This is what it looks like. Not just surviving in a harsh environment, but becoming something that can thrive in it." But 23 managed to scan Kim with its instruments. Bone density 300% above galactic average. Muscle fiber density 250% above standard. Cardiovascular efficiency remarkable. "And I'm just a normal human," Kim said. "Not an athlete, not a soldier, not specially enhanced. Just a regular person shaped by a world that doesn't make exceptions." For the first time since landing, his classmates were completely silent, finally beginning to understand what it truly meant to be from Earth. The next morning brought revelations that shattered every preconception Kim's classmates held about humanity. It started when Jae Min, a young Velcari researcher, accidentally cut himself on a jagged rock. The wound was deep enough to require immediate medical attention by galactic standards. Injuries of that severity could take weeks to heal and often required surgical intervention. Medical emergency. Bot 23 announced, scanning the injury. Immediate evacuation to ship's medical bay required. But Kim just glanced at the cut and shrugged. That's barely a scratch. Here, let me show you something. He deliberately drew his knife across his own palm, creating a similar wound. His classmates recoiled in horror as dark red blood welled up. By the void, what have you done? Vorkex cried. Watch, Kim said calmly. Over the next hour, they observed in fascination as Kim's wound began to close on its own. By evening, only a thin red line remained. By the next morning, even that was barely visible. Impossible, breathed Professor Nellera. Such rapid cellular regeneration should be impossible. Humans heal fast, Kim explained. We have to. Our world doesn't give us time to recover slowly. Fluxera's blue skin had gone completely pale. On my world, such an injury would require 3 weeks of treatment in a medical pod. Here it's called Tuesday, Kim replied, flexing his healed palm. Human children get cuts like this playing in their yards. Their parents put a small bandage on it and send them back outside. But 23's optical sensors focused intently on Kim's hand. Scanning. The cellular repair rate is 847% above galactic average. Blood clotting efficiency is unprecedented. Evolution, Kim said simply. Humans who didn't heal fast died young. After millions of years, only the quick healers survived to have children. But the real lesson came when their communication array malfunctioned during a sudden electrical storm that seemed to come from nowhere. Lightning split the sky, and electromagnetic pulses fried half their equipment, while his classmates huddled in the shelter, paralyzed by the chaos. Kim stood at the window watching the storm with obvious enjoyment. Beautiful, isn't it? He said. Beautiful? Vorkex's voice was nearly hysterical. The electromagnetic interference is off the charts. Our systems are failing. We could be stranded here. Or, Kim said, already moving toward the equipment lockers, we could fix it. What followed was a masterclass in human problem solving. While his classmates ran probability calculations and searched databases for proper procedures, Kim simply started taking things apart. You don't know what you're doing. But 23 protested, without proper schematics and diagnostic protocols. Sometimes you have to improvise, Kim replied, connecting components that had no business working together. Humans are good at making things work even when they shouldn't. Within 2 hours, he'd cobbled together a functioning communication system from spare parts, some copper wire from the facility's old electrical system, and what appeared to be components from a broken food processor. It shouldn't work, Professor Nellera marveled as clear signals came through the improvised array. But it does, Kim grinned. That's very human. We don't just survive impossible conditions. We make the impossible work for us. Yelnova's crystalline body was flickering with confusion. Your repair methodology has no logical foundation. The components are incompatible. The power requirements don't match. Yet it works, Kim finished. Logic is useful, but it's not everything. Sometimes you need intuition. Sometimes you need to try things that shouldn't work, because occasionally they do. Vorkex stared at the jury-rig system with something approaching awe. Your species does this regularly? Every day, Kim confirmed. When your world is trying to kill you, you learn to be creative. Fast. Human history is full of impossible solutions to impossible problems. He gestured toward the storm outside, which was beginning to calm down. You see chaos and danger. I see free electricity and water for our supplies. You see broken equipment. I see spare parts waiting to be used differently. But 23 was scanning the makeshift communication array with obvious confusion. The probability of this configuration functioning was less than 2%. How did you know it would work? I didn't, Kim said cheerfully. But humans learned long ago that impossible usually just means no one's tried it yet. So we try things. Most of the time they don't work. But when they do, He tapped the humming communication device. Magic happens. Min, his wound now barely visible, looked at Kim with new respect. On my world, if equipment breaks, we wait for replacement parts. We follow proper procedures. We don't just start connecting random things. And that works fine on a safe world. Kim nodded. But on Earth, waiting for proper procedures could mean death. So humans developed a different approach. We became very good at making do with whatever was available. Fluxera approached the improvised device cautiously. This represents a completely different thought process. Not logical progression, but leap thinking. Creative problem solving, Kim agreed. Sometimes the best solution isn't a logical one. Sometimes it's the crazy one that occurs to you at 3 a.m. when you're desperate and running out of options. Professor Nalera's tentacles moved in what Kim had learned was deep contemplation. Your species has survived by becoming adaptive improvisers. Among other things, Kim said, humans don't just adapt to their environment. We adapt our environment to us. And when that doesn't work, we adapt ourselves to do impossible things with whatever we have. As if to prove his point, the storm outside cleared completely, revealing a brilliant rainbow arcing across the sky. Kim's classmates stared at the beautiful sight, while Kim casually began collecting rainwater in empty containers. Even your weather makes no sense, Vortex muttered. Kim laughed. Welcome to Earth. Population, everyone who's too stubborn to die. For the first time, his classmates began to understand that what they'd mistaken for primitive barbarism was actually the galaxy's most sophisticated survival adaptation. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but it was unmistakable. It began with small things. Vortex started asking genuine questions instead of making mocking comments. But 23 requested detailed scans of human physiology for its research database. Even delicate Tsar Lin began venturing outside the shelter without maximum environmental protection, trusting in Kim's guidance. The turning point came on their final day when Park So-min, another human researcher who had joined them from Earth's scientific community, demonstrated something that left the entire group speechless. A rock slide had blocked their path back to the landing site. Tons of stone and debris that would take their equipment days to clear. The aliens began calculating the most efficient removal strategy when So-min simply walked up to the largest boulder, a mass that should have been impossible for her slight frame to even budge, and began to move it, not with technology, not with tools, just human muscle, leverage, and an absolute refusal to accept that something was impossible. The power-to-mass ratio is completely illogical, Bot 23 muttered, watching So-min systematically clear a path that their machine said couldn't be cleared. Logic isn't everything, Kim replied. Sometimes you need what humans call determination. So-min worked steadily, her movements efficient and purposeful. She didn't strain or struggle. She simply applied force in ways the aliens couldn't understand, using her body weight, finding the right angles, creating leverage where none seemed possible. How is she doing that? Fluxero whispered, his blue skin flickering with amazement. Physics, Kim said simply, and the willingness to try things that seem impossible. Within an hour, So-min had cleared a path wide enough for the group to pass through. She wasn't even breathing hard. On my world, Vortex said quietly, we would have called for heavy machinery. Wait a day for proper equipment. So-min wiped her hands on her pants and smiled. On Earth, we learned that sometimes you can't wait. Sometimes you just have to find a way. By the time they reached the ship, everything had changed. Professor Nalera was already composing her report, one that would revolutionize the galaxy's understanding of human capabilities. Her preliminary findings suggested that humans weren't primitive survivors, but rather the most sophisticated adaptive species yet discovered. Your world didn't make you weak, she told Kim as they prepared for departure. It made you incredible. The journey home was nothing like the tense trip out. Vortex spent hours asking Kim about human history, philosophy, and culture. But 23 wanted to understand human creativity and intuition, concepts that had no place in his logical framework but clearly produced results. Tell me about human art, Vortex said during one of the conversations. My people create beauty through mathematical precision. But human art, it seems to come from somewhere else. Kim thought for a moment. Human art comes from pain, joy, love, anger, all the emotions that help to survive. When a human creates something beautiful, they're putting their whole experience into it, not just what they know, but what they feel. But 23's optical sensors focus on Kim. Emotional input creates superior output? This contradicts logical efficiency principles. Maybe, Kim said, but look at the results. Human music, human stories, human paintings. They move people across the galaxy, even though they were created by beings from a single world. Yel Nova, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. I have been analyzing human cultural transmissions since our return journey began. The emotional complexity is unprecedented. Your stories contain layers of meaning that seem to reveal new depths upon each analysis. That's because humans are complicated, Kim explained. We're not just logical beings or just emotional beings. We're both. We think and feel at the same time, and that combination creates things that pure logic or pure emotion never could. Professor Nellera joined their conversation, her tentacles moving with excitement. Student Kim, I've been reviewing our data from Earth. The implications are staggering. Humans appear to be the only known species that actively seeks out challenge and discomfort for growth purposes. Kim nodded. We call it no pain, no gain. Most species avoid difficulty. Humans embrace it because we learn that overcoming challenges makes us stronger. This is why your physical capabilities exceed expectations. But 23 concluded, you deliberately stress your bodies to improve them. And our minds, Kim added, humans actively seek out problems to solve, puzzles to figure out, obstacles to overcome. Not because we have to, but because we want to. Because challenge makes us better. When they arrived back at Galactic Academy, word of their discoveries had already spread. Kim found himself surrounded by curious students from dozens of species. All wanted to know more about the Death Worlder, who could heal injuries that would hospitalize them, solve problems that their computers couldn't calculate, and thrive in conditions that would kill most galactic life. But the moment that meant the most came in the Academy's Great Hall, when Vorkek stood before the entire student body and spoke words Kim had never thought he'd hear. I owe Kim an apology, the Kytherian announced, his crystalline voice carrying clearly across the vast space. I called his species primitive. I was wrong. Humans aren't primitive. They're what the rest of us might become if we were strong enough. The applause that followed wasn't just polite academic acknowledgement. It was genuine respect, earned through understanding. Later, as Kim walked through corridors where students now nodded respectfully instead of whispering mockingly, he reflected on how much had changed. He was no longer the outcast Death Worlder. He was Kim Tae human, and that meant something powerful in the galaxy. The bullying had ended not with violence or anger, but with the simple truth of what humanity really was. Not the weakest species to reach the stars, but perhaps the strongest. And that made all the difference.